You are listening to the Thinking Effect podcast with Ortal Green and Lillian Kriegler.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 29. And today we're talking about how can teachers optimize memory. And I've got Ortal. Let's just say hello to her. Good day, Ortal.
Hi, Lillian. How are you?
I'm really good today. If our listeners hear a strange sound around my computer, I've got my cat in the room with me, which I don't usually have because I had a very noisy carpet cleaner in here earlier and she's terrified. So if she jumps on the keyboard or something, you'll know that it's just Pinto doing her thing.
Oh, it's great to have that special guest in our podcast today.
A fluffy one.
Yes.
Oh, so who's going to start? Maybe you start talking about optimizing memory.
Yeah, sure. So, there are many ways that you can present your information to help your student remember it better. So this episode, it's all about how you can tweak the way you present your content, the way you run and facilitate your lessons in a way that your students will better remember the content that you teach them.
Yeah, so I there's the wonderful Maya Angelou, who's now sadly passed, but she was a phenomenal artist and poet and activist. And her mantra was, if you know better, you can do better. So as educators, if we know more about how memory is more efficient and we can package our information more efficiently all the time, then the children's information goes from short-term memory and the here and now. It links with what's already in their brain and it goes to their long-term memory. So we want to know more about what makes memory work better.
Absolutely. It's so important to know because as you mentioned, Lillian, we scaffold in the knowledge and new learning is built upon existing knowledge. And you need to remember what you learn in order to make that new connection and better understand the new material and actually have a much deeper understanding overall. And also as a teacher, and also for the student, you don't want to keep repeating the same thing. It's boring for yourself and it's also disengaging for your students. So if you teach in a way that enhance your student capability to remember the material, then you create a lesson which is more engaging and actually more fun as well, because we're going to share with you really fun tools soon.
Yes, no, we will. So Audrey, shall I talk about the work that we're basing this lesson on today, our podcast on today?
Yes, please.
We'll talk about the brothers Tony and Barry Buzan. That's Buzan. And they were working in the 1950s and 60s and did a tremendous amount of research on memory. And so based on clinical research and case studies, they came up with 5 ways that memory is enhanced. And we're going to we'll unpack a few of these in this podcast today. But, the first one is the primacy effect. So that's like the first thing you see or the first thing you hear has an impact. It provokes your thinking. Then the opposite of that is the recency effect. So the last thing you hear. So really it's important to do something like a great little story at the end of the lesson, which encapsulates it. So the recency effect is one. Then, as we've mentioned before, association. So, if you've already got things in your long-term memory, associating new information with that is important. Emphasis. So, if you make some special emphasis during your presentation on what you want them to understand. So color and those sorts of things are really important. Videos, engaging the senses, which we talk about all the time in this program. And then also, really harnessing children's interests. And I'm a great one in finding out what children's interests are, but I'm also a great one about developing new interests. So don't just leave it with what they're currently interested in, but push it so that they become more interested in more things.
Definitely open their minds to more things. It's so
Yes.
important. And I want to touch about the primacy as I really like, I mean, I like all of them, they're great tools. But with the primacy, I think when you, as a teacher, when you want to kick off a new topic, a new subject, then you can really think, okay, how can I evoke really strong emotion? So when the students come into the class straight away, they're like, oh my God, either surprised or shocked or laughing their heads off. And so you're off to a great start, and they're definitely going to remember that session. And one of the things we spoke about as we speak about sustainability often, obviously, we're all very concerned with that. Then let's say you want to start a topic on sustainability. So one thing as a provocation, and I don't know how many of you are going to like this idea, but I'm going to share it anyway, is to cover the desk and chair with plastic and paper waste. Just cover the whole thing. And I'm sure that will shock your students and they won't be prepared for that experience at all. If this is too much for you, then another option you can do is, for example, to print images of marine life caught in nets or in plastic or choking or on the beach. You know, there's so many sad photos like that, unfortunately. So you can cover the walls of your classroom with these photos. So when your student come into the classroom, this is kind of very confronting for them. And that will enable you to start talking about the topic, and your students are going to listen after that emotional experience. And there are many different ways to go about it. But I think the first expression, the first experience of a topic is really important.
Absolutely. And I love, by the way, I just love your idea of collecting all of your coffee cups, and, you know, obviously you'll be selective with what trash you have in there, but I think that's a great idea because it makes it very real for students when, you know, they expect a beautiful environment because you're spending all your time creating it, and they walk into one every morning and all of a sudden they come in and there's just, to use a lovely Israeli word, balagan. It's just,
oh yeah, well done. I'm really impressed, Lilian.
There we go. So I love that. And so either that shock, horror, and then, oh my gosh, you just want to clean it up straight off, or the sadness. And I mean, I recently watched Britain's Got Talent, and a 7-year-old child, 7-year-old young boy, did a presentation where he'd written a poem about sustainability. So this is how real this can get if you switch people on, how real it can get. And they'd worked with designers and videographers to create the most stunning, most beautiful video material behind him that matched with what he was saying. And as you say, you know, the turtles with the plastic, or fish, or creatures caught in those plastic rings, things that, you know, are happening, and photographs of beautiful beaches where the whole world's trash is turned up, and you have to go out and deal with it. So that shock value, but also appealing to the, you know, the emotion of sadness, because what you want to do is you want them not to feel, oh, I feel so sorry for you, and feel empathetic. You want them to be action, to bring action, you know. So that and in Reggio Emilia, they talk about this as a provocation. And with younger children, one of the provocations they did is they just put a black silhouette of a bird on the window and a screen nearby where that shadow was projected onto the screen. And of course, you can imagine as the sun changed direction through the day, that bird shadow started to move.
Yeah.
And these 3 and 4-year-olds were fascinated and spent the whole morning trying to catch it.
Oh, that is beautiful.
They were building cages with sticks. They were sticking things on it. They were trying to trap the shadow. And it started this magnificent project on shadow and light. The most beautiful, most observable science in the world is the science of light. So provocation is really cool. And in that, you can see how the sensors came in. You can see how they're using their prior knowledge, that you can catch a bird in a cage, or you have to clean the environment, whatever it is. So all of those things that Buzan was talking about become important. And then how you record it also. You love brain maps. So you talk a little bit about how the children can record this information.
Absolutely. Before that, I want to touch on a point you raised, Liliane, about empowering the students. And while you can start with shocking or maybe sadness and evoke such a strong emotion, we want to empower them and to make sure they're not overwhelmed and feel powerless, that they can't do anything. And often with sustainability, it can be overwhelming. So one of the things is, when we talk about recency, how you can end such a lesson is by sharing an inspiring and powerful story. For example, like the boy you mentioned in our previous episode, Liliane, who wanted to create a soap that doesn't have any chemicals that are distracting the marine life. And so that boy made it, worked on his idea and created that soap, and it is selling in Australia. And so it is very empowering to hear such a story. So make sure you end such a session with a very inspiring story, with a story that empowers your student to take action, to do something, that make them feel that, they can drive a change, they can make a difference, they have the power to do so. It's very important also because we want to balance that shocking. If you start with something that is shocking or sad, we want to make sure we balance it and empowering the students to take action.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. And I love that you're balancing the shock with inspiration and action. And also that story of the surfer was a math story, wasn't it, in our last thing? Because it comes from a program called $20 Boss. You started with $20. It's a maths thing for real life, but this is sustainability. So education, the more complex it is, and the more interesting, funny enough, the more interested the students get. When it's too simple, they lose interest. So combining these different things is really important. And then getting them to record and share it also in interesting ways that keeps their engagement alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where you touched before about mind maps that we can also use to help them memorize their learning and make new connection. So encourage your student to create a mind map where they connect the new knowledge, new information with existing knowledge, and encourage them also to use different colors and use the drawing, because the whole process of drawing, for example, and we spoke about it in previous episode, help the thinking process, help to better process and understand the new knowledge and better remember it, better understand it. So all of this come together, and this comes again to the idea that don't be afraid to make the session more complex, to make it more interesting and rich, as your students are going to benefit from it when you combine different things in one session.
That's quite true. So in summary then, we want to enhance memory, because it's important to have things in memory, even to be creative. The more you have in your mind, the more you can make interesting and innovative connections. So the why is crucial, because it makes the students more engaged, not only in learning, but in life, and they become more competent. And over time, they will have greater life success, and besides scholastic success. And how we do it is to use some of these great techniques that have been given by Tony and Barry Buzan, by the way, who also started mind mapping. So the primacy and recency, using the senses, connecting to what we know, and harnessing students' interests. And one which you mentioned, Ortal, is to get them to do things. The more we do it, the easier it becomes for us.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful summary. Thank you,
You always
Liliane.
say that. You're so kind.
I always enjoy listening to your summaries.
Yes.
All right. So again, feel free to write to us. Tell us your stories. How did you use the primacy or recency tools to help your student remember better the content that you teach them? So write to us to the Thinking Effect podcast at gmail.com. We love hearing your stories and we look forward to hear from you.
Yes, and next episode is number 30. So it's going to be pretty special, and we'll see you then.
See you then.